Hello and welcome to Celtic Fans TV and welcome to Greece. We're here outside Crete Airport. We're just waiting on our connecting flight back to Glasgow. We're going to put a slightly different spin on the full-time reaction this week. Obviously it's the first European away trip. We've got some content for the travel and we want to get a more in-depth look at the game last night. So it's just going to consist of myself and Ryan talking over the game in a bit more detail than we would usually get from a fan interview. Not the outcome we were hoping for, of course, but I think the outcome that deep down we were all expecting after a poor result in the first leg last week. Despite having a lot of possession, they got the sucker punch away goal, and despite playing with an extra man for half an hour, we were unable to take a lead over here, and it was always going to be tough given the hostile atmosphere and the heat over here, given that Celtic historically don't travel well. But in typical Celtic fashion, Ryan, we got off to a slow start last night.
Aye, first loving what AEK did. I feel that when you go away and you set out your stalls at the beginning, you want to kind of, if you can make the impact quick, do it. But again, there was visible nerves in the team. I think you and I discussed it a wee bit last night. Visible nerves there just about kind of the opening minutes, and we lost that goal within 6 minutes of the first whistle.
You always, with Celtic, you're always away in Europe willing to get through the first 15-20 minutes, because you know that we get flustered, you know that defensively we panic, and you just want to get through that first 15-20 minutes, get a foothold in the game and then take it from there. But it was a really poor goal to lose as well. It's kind of, again, from a cross ball situation similar to the first leg, and you could say to the goal we conceded against Hearts on Saturday there, where the ball was down Lustig's side. He wasn't able to stop the cross, and then after that it's just a comedy of errors really how he ended up in the back of the net for there.
Aye, when you look back at it now and you see the shots of, obviously we're in the stands, so you're just seeing things kind of, you're taking it second by second, so you're not kind of having a good overview of how it was set up. But there was two solid lines of four, and the AEK player was on the outside of that, and somehow, like you said, Lustig on the right hand side again failed to close out the cross. That cross should never have come in. Reminiscent of the first leg, that cross should never have made its way into the 18-yard box ever, like at that level especially, but it shouldn't have made it in. It did make it in. It should have been dealt with better. It wasn't. But again, defensive frailties is something that we're well aware of, and they made us pay.
They didn't create a lot, but they were very ruthless with the chances that they did get. But after that, again, sort of typical Celtic away in Europe. Only once we lost the goal, we kind of settled into the game a bit.
Aye.
Went back to the sort of rhythm of the first leg, where we were dominating the ball. We were gradually creating more and more without anything clear cut, but you felt like the momentum was gradually swinging towards the end of the first half. And obviously I think Griffiths had a little half chance that he flashed wide just before half time, and we were coming into the game. But I'd say just so typical of Celtic away in Europe to panic, lose a goal and then settle into the game.
Yeah.
If we could have gained that foothold before losing the goal and gone in at half time 0-0,
yeah,
it would have been a totally different game.
Yeah,
but it was early in the second half again, kind of the opposite to last week, where AEK managed to get the goal right before half time. It was shortly after half time, and again from a set piece, a cross ball, we just switched off again, and we were punished with Leviathan putting AEK 2-0 up.
Aye, and again, we talked about it, right? They didn't need many invitations. We discussed it. AEK over the tie had probably 3 clear-cut opportunities and the 3 goals. I think realistically, as you get towards that Champions League level, and I'm not saying that they're a phenomenal side, they're not. We showed we hold our own against them, and we had the bulk of possession over the tie. But when it comes to the final third, if you give teams like that an opportunity, especially somebody like AEK who very counter-attacking, that's what they're primed for. Opportunities fall to them, they've got the guys that can put it into the back of the net, and 5 minutes into the second half they made us pay the same way they did 5 minutes into the first.
Much like the first half, straight after the game settled back into its rhythm, the same pattern that I had over 80-90% of the 2 legs, where Celtic went back to dominating the ball, and again the momentum started to build up and we were pushing. Again, not that vast amount of clear-cut chances, but we did eventually get the goal through Sinclair, and it gave us a bit of hope. Again, you could say reminiscent of Celtic historically in Europe. It's always, when you think it's done, we give you a bit of hope, and then it's always too little too late. There's lots of layers to this. We could look at the difference in the team between the Rosenborg tie and going into this tie. Mikael Lustig was involved in 2, if not 3, of the AEK goals. That sort of selection issue where we've seen Gamboa come in and covered well for him. I just think Gamboa was very unfortunate to drop out of the team.
Gamboa has had a raw deal, because as soon as Lustig was back, it's, again, we've spoken about before, Brendan Rodgers does have people who he favours in certain positions, and it's apparent that he just doesn't have faith in what Gamboa could do for him, and I think we were made to pay by having Lustig in that role. It just looks like Lustig's legs are short. It looks like he's missing a yard of pace. He's not dealing with the things that maybe 18 months ago he was dealing with. Lustig was one of the problems in defence, but not the only one. We can't single out a single player and say that he's the reason why we are sitting here today discussing going out at the 3rd qualifying round to AEK Athens. We're not. We're sitting here having a conversation, and Lustig was one of the chinks in the armour.
Gamboa gives you a pace and an intensity, and I think in the scenarios, if you look at the away goal that AEK got at Celtic Park, and certainly the first goal yesterday, it was that pace and intensity.
It's a couple of yards faster
for Lustig to just close, to get tight and stop the cross, and don't allow the cross to come in. That's something where Gamboa could maybe have an edge over him, but as we say, that can just bring us on nicely to the rest of the defensive issues, because I mean, where do we start? We know that we obviously always historically defensively failed in Europe, but particularly at this moment in time we know that Jack Hendry has come in for a lot of criticism. He's obviously young and he's inexperienced. Jozo Simunovic as well has increasingly come in for criticism. They both look individually not ready to be a complete Celtic centre half. So going into that tie with them as a pair, I mean, we were fighting an uphill battle before.
You just have to listen to Brendan Rodgers saying that we didn't have our best central defenders there. Like that says a lot in itself, and that he knows that he's fielded a team which we didn't have Ayer because he got the yellow card in the first leg, which Ayer has become somebody who you can see starting to kind of grow a bit of maturity at a young age in a central defensive role, but we didn't have him. I'm sure we'll probably touch on the Boyata fiasco in the next couple of minutes, but to touch on the 2 guys that were actually on the park who turned up for Celtic, who did as good a job as they can do at this point in time, which again, not good enough, but Jozo Simunovic, the amount of stray passes, the two of them often found looking at each other as a blame point, somebody to pass something on to and say that wasn't my ball, that was yours, or you should have dealt with that. And I just feel that not one of them could stand up and say, right, I'm commanding it, back me up. And I feel that that's something that Celtic need at this point in time. We need a solid, experienced defender who can take Ayer on board, or Henry. Young, could come into a game, he has took a lot of stick, but he's very young and inexperienced at that level especially. If we can get somebody who's a solid centre half that can come in, and one of those young players can learn from him and work with him, it would tighten up things, I think. And the two of them just looked lost last night.
Absolutely. I think the thing about the whole Celtic backline is it sort of spreads nerves. It was spreading nerves and uncertainty, and like you see, even Simunovic, I know you touched on, he had a few stray passes. Again at the weekend against Hearts it was the same. He had a few horrible passes, just really cheap turnovers of possession.
Yep.
And as you say, there was that few situations between them where they're passing on the responsibility to each other, and there's just not that calm, experienced head in there.
Ownership
that we need to really to qualify for the Champions League, and that's something that's been a glaring issue for quite some time. It seems like every transfer window since time began, we've been crying out for a commanding centre half, but we haven't got one.
I can't even remember a commanding centre half we've been linked with. I can't remember anything in the papers where you go, that's the guy that we need. But again, we've discussed it, Celtic don't leak the people they're targeting, we don't kind of feed that information to the media, so maybe we have kind of missed out on one or two that might have done a job for us, but we'll never know. And again, we suffer at the heart of defence.
It's on nicely, I think, to just kind of talk about how we were positioned going into this qualifying journey. I think we knew that obviously with the extra round, it was going to be a lot more difficult this year. But ultimately, we haven't strengthened. We knew where the glaring areas that we needed to strengthen were. We've already touched on them at right back. I think centre half is the one that everybody has been crying out for 3-4 transfer windows, and for some reason we haven't recruited in the areas. We haven't. I mean, at any level, it could be recruitment. At board level, we haven't invested, and ultimately that's cost us, because when you look at the tie over the two legs against the AEK, I think the contrast you can see is the defensive solidity that they have and how good they are in their defensive shape. Contrast that with us, who
calamitous,
we're so uncertain, and all over the place at times. So I mean, here we are, we're facing the Europa League playoff now, but isn't that ultimately, that's where we are? We're a Europa League team. We haven't invested the money to get in the right quality to compete at the Champions League level. That's cost us.
We just haven't, and we've spoken about it a number of times, that investment when you've got 2 or 3 yards of a head start is the investment that takes you from merely qualifying to the Champions League to maybe into the last 16, however, different ball game these days, but it certainly takes you further than where you're at, and it guarantees, for want of a better word, that qualification past those 4 qualifiers. Like, I don't think that Celtic should have struggled this year if the investment was there to get into the group stages of the Champions League. I don't think they should have. We did. We're now into the Europa, the playoff for Europa. The money that you earn for being part of those competitions is worlds apart. It's just worlds apart, and you said it, we're a Europa League team with the level of investment that someone at the club is willing to give us.
That's a harsh reality of it. I mean, we should have strengthened this so we could go over and over, but we haven't done. And the real sort of sickener, if you like, is not so much that the Europa League is a dreadful competition to be in. No, it's just that it puts a real dampener on the start of the season, when everybody is so excited about the anticipation of qualifying for the Champions League, and then not to get it. Obviously, there's a lot of crazy ties you can get in the Europa League group stages.
Oh, aye.
You can end up in now post to Europe, and it's nowhere near as glamorous as the Champions League group stages, both in terms of prestige, competition, finances, whatever.
Yeah.
It does put a real dampener on things, and I think it's just the sort of, I think that just is like sort of like rubbing the salt in the wounds for us. At the end of this week's been a really tough week for us. Obviously culminating in an elimination last night, but obviously there's been a lot of speculation about how Brendan Rodgers is feeling towards the board and the lack of investment that we've had. We've also got this issue with Dedrick Boyata. I mean, should we have sold him, should we not have sold him? In hindsight, it doesn't matter because we didn't sell him, but then he's obviously throwing the towel in anyway.
Yeah.
It's just been a really, really bad week for Celtic, and we now, like going forward, now we need fresh impetus, we need fresh faces, we really need like galvanised over the next few weeks, because everybody is on a bit of a downer, and we could sense that last night. Arriving in Athens and the build up to the game, the meeting point, the buses up to the stadium, everybody was subdued, and that's unlike the Celtic support. Even at the worst of times, especially away in Europe, they come to represent the team as vibrantly as possible, and obviously the hope builds once you get into the stadium, but there was always an undercurrent of
apprehension,
nerves, because as we've said already, I think ultimately we knew what our fate was last night.
You touched on Boyata. Real issue with him over the last week. In hindsight, you're right, in hindsight now we can look at it and say we should have offloaded him when Fulham came in. We should have taken the improved offer of £12 million and offloaded Boyata when we had the opportunity, but you don't know until after the fact. I just feel like it's a proper sour taste now. I think that the team won't appreciate what he's done to Celtic. They won't appreciate that there's no support there for them. I feel that we've backed him as a support. He's not always been the stellar performing centre half that we would have liked him to be, prone to the same mistakes as others already mentioned. So I think it just leaves a sour taste, and now is the time. Like, we just don't hang about anymore, we just get him out the door.
Just to bring us away for the transfer debacle then, obviously Dembele came back last night, got the last half an hour, just back from his hamstring injury, but this is something that we've really struggled with. We've seen last season with Griffiths and Dembele both out for prolonged periods of time. Edouard's game time was a bit sporadic because he was only on loan. And then we've seen last night Edouard didn't take part in training the night before and he was out. So this looks like we've got a real problem, because we've got three very good strikers, but we have to keep them fit, because last season they weren't able to get into any sort of rhythm. Neither of them clocked up a high goal tally, and that's something that going forward, I think we've looked a little bit blunt up front, a little bit short ideas, a little bit lacking incisiveness, and I just think it's so important for us to get day three fit, because we don't need to strengthen in that area anymore, but we do have to have day three fit at all times.
Even two of them. I think, and if you can get the two of them, if you could have like your Dembele and Edouard, or two of them. If we could have two of them, they would be the optimum two, just given what we saw in the pre-season. And again, that leads on nicely, because when you look at the number of times you and I had conversations last year around the lack of goals, the number of 0-0 draws, which it was like night and day compared to the Invincibles season, where we banged in goals for fun, and there was often fours, there was often threes, there was sometimes more. So, and I think that was something that was missing last season, because we didn't have a prolonged period of time where any of them were fit together, where you had options, where you had depth at that level. And again, it's funny sitting here saying we didn't have depth at that level, because we've just touched, we don't need to strengthen the front three. They're proper good strikers in their own right, they can get goals. I think there has to be something wrong at the back end. I think the way that they're training, prehab, rehab, there must be something that's not happening that is leading to these injuries, because these guys aren't all injury prone. Like, they might be, but I just think it's going to be a tough one to accept that they're just injury prone. That's the way it's always going to be. I think there is probably something that the back team staff could do a bit better.
It's been a tough week, but it's only a tough week. We've had a lot of good weeks in the past 2 seasons under Brendan Rodgers. I think there's no doubt this is probably the lowest sort of ebb we've been at since Brendan Rodgers came in. But
it is,
how do we change it up? How do we add a fresh impetus going forward? How do we bring that spark back in the next few weeks?
Investment. I think it's only natural when something becomes stagnant. Like the players, when you look at what Brendan Rodgers did with a largely unchanged team when he joined, and he turned a lot of these players around, about your Callum McGregors, your James Forrest, like people who weren't setting the world alight, like now look phenomenal players. Jamesy did amazing last season, so I think it's just fresh blood. But again, and Brendan touches on it often, it's the right fresh blood, it's quality. It's having somebody who comes in as a quality addition to what is a good nucleus, which creates a bit of life about them again and gives them a bit of hope, a bit of drive, and a bit of purpose to push on forward again. We went in ascendancy for the first couple of seasons with Brendan because of what he brought as a manager, as a leader, but I think now it's time to boost that again and give that a re-injection of quality in the right places.
I think the whole club as well has got to just win this week, put it to bed. We've got to go and recruit, we've got to go and get the right players in now. It's too late for the Champions League. It's not too late in context of the transfer window. No, we still need the fresh faces, we still need the fresh impetus, and that's what we've got to do now in the next couple of weeks. Celtic will now face the winner of Spartak, Jurmala and Suduva in the Europa League playoff round next week, for a place in the Europa League group stage, of course. That's it from us here in Greece. Thanks for watching. It'd be great to hear your own thoughts on how we go forward in the comments below. Let us know what you think of this content as well. Obviously it's the first time we've done this sort of thing. We wanted to change it up, coming in away European tie, and give you a more in-depth sort of look at the game, and rather than the sort of fan interviews afterwards. So let us know what you think. Let us know if you would like to see any other content. Don't forget to share and subscribe below, and keep up with all the content as it's published, and we will see you at Firhill on Saturday. See you then.